Tyrel Owens here, Ottawa County, north central Kansas. We get about 26 to 30 inches of precip a year. Anywhere in there is pretty much what I'd call normal. We are a pretty small operation, just over 100 acres. Our main focus is sheep, hair sheep, out on either pasture or cover crops. This will be our 5th or 6th year lambing, so that's how long I'd say we've been farming. We use, well, I don't know anything else other than soil health practices because I am not traditionally trained in farming by any means. I didn't go to school for it. So I went to YouTube University and Podcast University. So everything that I can glean from other resources, I try to implement what I think will work and implement what doesn't work sometimes. So out here, we're standing in our perennial, our closest thing that we'd have to a native pasture. We've been managing this pasture for 4 years. There is still some eastern red cedars in it, some buckbrush in areas, but I think the buckbrush is getting better. I think grasses are starting to overtake it. But as you can see, there's quite a bit of cover left. We didn't graze it too hard. I think I only grazed it one time last year, and that would have been in the spring, early summer. So June, I think June is when it would have been grazed. We will come in and we'll graze it at least once this growing season. But I mean, it's only had sheep on it, and I just move them about once a day, every other day. So nothing fancy as far as the management goes. Nothing super precise, just if they got enough, I move them. If they don't, I mean, it's not an exact science, it's definitely an art. So this field here, this is about a 20-acre field. We've been managing this field. I think this will be our 3rd year. The spring will be our 3rd spring. Before we started managing it, it would have been historically, it'd been an alfalfa field for 10 years, and then it had been used for annual forages, taken off usually probably twice a year. And since we've had it, it's been in continuous no-till, grazed. This half would have been in milo 2 summers ago now, going to be 2 summers ago. The other half was in a forage sorghum. So nothing was in here last spring. We lambed out here. We just grazed what was coming up volunteer-wise and had some bale processed hay. And then in May, came in and planted sun hemp, sunflower, cowpeas, mung beans, buckwheat, and a few other things maybe. Crabgrass came on very hard and heavy, but it makes good sheep feed, so it's not the end of the world. We would have grazed this until end of July. Then we would have sprayed it out in end of August and got it drilled with, so probably triticale, maybe a little rye, Austrian winter pea, some hairy vetch, and maybe a little bit of brassica there in September. But we were dry with the cover that grew. We never had a recharging rain, so we don't have the best to stand, especially in this spot. Because we've been grazing this, I don't know how many grazings it's had, probably 3, 4, maybe 5. So we got plenty of armor on the soil, but we got good moisture. It has improved, I can tell you that much. And compared to stuff that you go and look that hasn't had the continuous covers and the diversity of covers and the livestock integration, the soil, even though it's only been managed no-till for maybe it's been no-till for 6 years and we've only been managing it for 3 years, the difference that it has made is very noticeable compared to something that's just been conventionally managed. So the reason why we got into sheep was basically from YouTube. Watched a show called Lambing Live over in the UK and watched that, and I like the idea of sheep, but that kind of really made me really want to get into them, mostly because my full-time job is working in a feedlot, so I get plenty of cattle and I don't need any more than what I already get to deal with. So fell in love with sheep. I pulled the trigger actually on getting more commercial. We didn't start off with these. We had 8 hair sheep, and then we bought 20 more Rambouillet. Was at Soil Health U and listened to Nick Voss speak on a panel about grazing sheep on cover crops. And all of a sudden I was like, duh, dummy, why wouldn't that work if people are doing it with cattle? Why can't you do it with sheep? So went up in the stands at lunch, made a phone call to the bank about a loan, called the guy who had sheep advertised, and in 2 weeks we were home with sheep. So they're more profitable than cattle because they lamb at a year of age. They average, just say, 1.5 lambs a ewe. So that means some will have a twin, others won't. So that's how you get your 1.5 lambs per ewe. Prices have been pretty good. They don't take a lot of infrastructure. The infrastructure you do have is pretty light and pretty small and relatively affordable. And you can get to actually viable with not a whole lot of sheep, or not a whole lot of capital. That's what I guess I should say. You can buy, so when we started, you could buy a ewe, let's say, for $150, where a cow, say you buy a cow, that one cow costs you $1,500 for a cow. And on the same acreage, if you're going to have, say you have 10 cows, on that same acreage, you could run maybe 60 to 80 head of sheep. It's a lot easier to get quote unquote scalable with sheep than it is with cattle and not break the bank, especially when you're starting out. And they're easy. We don't do a whole lot with them as far as physically handling the sheep. So we lamb in May, first week of May, last week of April is when we start. And then we will sell off the male lambs or coal ewes or whatever there. September, October is what we typically do. We have taken a few all the way through to slaughter weight. We have butchered some and sold a few, but we are 100% rented land, so we don't have anything permanent for infrastructure wise. So to start a sheep grazing operation, all you need is 7 of these fences. So you can make a 4 fence paddock. You make 2 more vertical fences, and you have your other break at the end. So all it takes to get a grazing, rotational, managed grazing system, however you want to classify it as, operation going, is 7 of these electric fences with, we have a 3-joule charger on it. You got a charge controller, a deep cycle battery, and a solar panel, a couple of ground rods, and you got your fencer. Like I said, it's pretty down and dirty, cheap infrastructure. One of these fences, I think, are $125 a piece. So about $900. Like I said, you can get 7 of these and you got your whole fence system set up. Then for water, we simply have an old trailer that was in the weeds. I put air in the tires. Those are actually new tires on it. But when we started 5 years ago, just tires held air and we were up and going. Put a shuttle, old chemical shuttle on it, and just got the cargo straps underneath. And then right now in the winter, we're watering out of, they're 25, I think they're 25 gallon tanks. And we just fill 2 of them. I keep the hose on in the winter, and usually as long as we unthaw or we get above freezing, I can keep the tank full. Otherwise, I'll just haul water every day, but 2 tanks will do. In the springtime, when you're grazing really nice, lush forage, the sheep won't drink. I mean, maybe the whole flock would drink 5 gallons of water a day. So at that point, you're basically just keeping water out for the dogs. And that's another thing with, you have sheep, I feel like you have to have dogs. The people that I think of as my mentors for sheep, or people that I look to for information, whether it's Greg Judy or Mike Wallace or Jim Gersh or Nick Voss, you got to have dogs if you're going to have sheep, because they have teeth. A llama or a donkey don't have teeth. They're hardy. They stay outside 365 days a year, and they're just enjoyable, and they're something different.